Welcome everyone. So here we've got a session where we're going to be talking about Assets Data Manager with Mike Jones. Mike, why don't you introduce yourself?
Howdy team. So Mike Jones, formerly the Managing Director of AirTrack Software, obviously acquired by Atlassian in November of last year. Now a product manager in JSM, specifically looking after all of assets. So it's been a wild 11 months so far, but really excited to be here. So thank you, Jeff, for having me on.
Oh, so glad you could. Look, we've got a lot of topics we could go through. So I thought if we start off with talking about Data Manager, what it is, why should I care? The journey from AirTrack to Atlassian. So that must have been quite interesting, going from small, you're the ruler of all, to ruler of all. Yeah, what was that like, and what's your current role at Atlassian? And I know that you've mentioned assets, and I'm interested in your vision. We use assets quite a lot. We love it. Love to talk to you a bit about that. So first off, sorry, Clayton's asked a question about, are we on mute by default? Yes, everyone's on mute, but just type in some chat, and then we can raise any questions people have. So, Data Manager, what is it? Why do I care?
Well, what I might do, Jeff, is take you on a little bit of a journey, if that's all right. So, to where the product started and what it was, and to the realization of what it is now in Atlassian, what it means to customers, to partners, to the community in general. So, AirTrack started off its life within an IT asset management business. And really what I was doing, so I was helping customers implement solutions that handled software license compliance, hardware asset management, and inevitably those solutions needed data from across an organization to be able to be complete, accurate, and help people get a grip on their estate. And what we were finding more often than not was that each of the individual data sources were owned by different teams, run for very different purposes, but all contained different attributes about the same assets. And you could only say that we are compliant if you knew that all of these underpinning data sources were complete, current, and correct. Now, customers do this manually all the time. They pull data from lots of different sources for point-in-time assessments to understand their gaps in coverage and quality. And unluckily for me, I was doing that manually for lots of very, very big customers.
So a lot of Excel spreadsheets.
And little access databases and everything like that. And I'm not technical by any stretch of the imagination. So coming into doing that multiple times, and people would give me 17 data sources I'd have to try and crunch. And then 3 weeks later, they'd give me another one, and everything's just completely out of whack. You're comparing apples with oranges. So I thought there had to be a better way. So basically, we commissioned a team to put together a solution that helps us to deliver a service faster. And that's what turned into AirTrack. But by nature of bringing in data from lots of different systems across an organization, you can actually fulfill multiple goals for different teams. So if I'm pulling from an IT perspective, things like Active Directory, antivirus, threat and vulnerability, backup, inventory and discovery solutions, their CMDBs, leasing registers, fixed asset registers, I can address the needs of multiple teams. So from a SecOps perspective, they can start to look at which of my devices are out there in the environment that don't have threat and vulnerability coverage or antivirus coverage, which mission critical systems, according to the CMDB, haven't been backed up in the last 14 days and have a critical patch. So we started to identify that this thing wasn't just around IT asset management. It actually fulfilled a number of use cases, and that's what I'm really excited to bring to Atlassian. So what Data Manager is now, obviously, is a mechanism to get clean, current, and correct data into the CMDB. So one of the challenges that many customers within Assets had was that we didn't have out-of-the-box adapters to core solutions across their environment, and we're bringing a lot of those to the table with Data Manager. The other piece was being able to reconcile and aggregate that data from those multiple sources to get a view of your golden record. So pulling the different attributes from each of the systems and to say, this is the logical representation of my asset from across all of my different sources. And now I can use that information to power my workflows within JSM. And sorry, go on, Jeff.
No, I was just going to say, just picking up to something you said before, classic, okay, something hasn't been patched in 14 days or whatever. If you know that and that goes through, then of course, if it needs manual intervention or something like that, a Jira task could be created, or perhaps an automation, whatever it might be to trigger it all off. Okay, that sounds pretty cool. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're all right. So that's kind of what Data Manager is now for Atlassian. So we are connecting to multiple data sources across a customer's environment, aggregating and normalizing and making sure there's no noise, so no garbage data in there. So we filter out things based on a set of rules that say, hey, I don't want to bring this into my CMDB unless it meets certain criteria. And that criteria could be that it's been inventoried in an active source in the last 90 days, that it's not in a disabled state in every single source. So we're not polluting the CMDB with poor quality data, which in turn affects my ability to plan. But that's one side of the equation. So getting that clean, current, correct data into CMDB, empowering those JSM workflows. The other side of it is that we can help customers to get the most out of their existing investment in those tool sets. So not just about getting the data into the CMDB, but can I now report on this system says that Mike Jones is based in Melbourne, but his laptop is showing up as it's in Sydney. Do I have a problem there? Or do I have devices not covered by threat and vulnerability or antivirus? And can we leverage automation or orchestration coming in the future to go and remediate those systems at a system level before raising a ticket in JSM to assign it to a carbon-based life form so they can go and investigate, remediate. So really trying to take the effort out of the customer's hands, one, for doing this kind of analysis, and then the remediation. So I think it's quite a powerful solution when you look at this in the context of other service management solutions in the ecosystem.
So my team's played a little bit around this. So yeah, we are an Atlassian partner business. And okay, so I haven't played with it myself. So I'll just go to a high level. To do this, this only works with Atlassian Cloud, right? It's not for the data center solutions.
Yep. So it is available for all premium and enterprise customers in cloud at no additional cost.
The next one is you require a server running on their infrastructure, right? So it's not that you're connecting up assets or the Atlassian Cloud directly into lots of different systems. Mm-hmm. It's a server is required on the client side, behind the firewall, if you like, mm-hmm. connecting up to AWS or whichever it might be, Intra or Azure, whatever it might be, and then some work's done there, sending that information over up to the assets in the cloud. So they're not exposing all their data.
Right. There's deliberate decisions on this as well. So the client infrastructure that's required, obviously we used to work in highly regulated, very secure environments, and they didn't want cloud solutions executing calls to their data sources without their control. So the data manager client that sits in the customer's environment, it doesn't have to be on-premises infrastructure. It can be a virtual instance or it can be a cloud instance within their domain, so local to them. And ultimately what that's doing is kicking off the jobs to connect to your data sources, and then you can schedule it using your scheduling solution, or you can run custom commands if you choose to. It was done deliberately from a security perspective, but we are exploring how can we do those cloud-to-cloud connections to reduce the need for that infrastructure locally in your environment. And obviously there will be decisions for customers to make to say, do we want this thing to execute from Atlassian Cloud, or do we want it to execute from our local environment? And we'll give people that option. So we don't want to take away that flexibility.
Great, that's excellent. Now there's questions come up from Rue. Where can we find this feature in JSM? And I think that's where we say coming soon.
We do say coming soon. So obviously, it's been 11 months since we joined Atlassian, and the team's been working ferociously to integrate the solution. So we're not just talking about a like for like, let's plug this thing in and get it working. We're looking at the Atlassian motion, so it's a high velocity motion. Whereas with AirTrack, we could be more white glove support, providing assistance, doing the configuration. What we want to make sure is that this meets customer expectations in terms of the experience, and means that you can work either with a partner or yourself to establish this. So we've had to make a decision recently to delay the rollout from what is Q3 of calendar year 2024 to Q4. So that's in that October to December timeframe of this year. But once that's available, it will be in the JSM menu under assets as a feature of assets. There
you go, Rue. So before Christmas.
Before Christmas. Christmas present for everybody.
Yeah, that's right. Christmas 2024. What is it going to be available for the sandboxes as well? So can people try it out and connect up with the sandbox, their assets in the sandbox, and then if that works out well, switch it over to production side.
Yeah, so at the moment, we don't have the ability to say, run this in production and then point the data to a sandbox instance. So you would have to have it contained within your sandbox instance. But that is one of the things that we're exploring. So as you want to bring in additional data sets, you want to test this thing out first, make sure that it's viable for your use cases before porting it over.
Yep. So, okay, early access program, beta version of this. When can people start touching it?
So we did do a very closed beta earlier on this year. So we had, I think it was 15 customers and 5 or 10 partners involved in that. And what we were looking to do there was to assess performance to scale, usability, all of those things. We got some really interesting feedback and results. So this is why we're looking at how do we make the user experience better and make sure that this is a viable option. When we initially launch, we will be going to open beta, making sure that we're meeting those gates in the customer experience before going to GA. But yeah, all in very quick succession. So expect some more announcements coming soon.
Okay, but yeah, again, premium, whether you're a premium 10 agent user or your enterprise, you'll have access to this capability to give it a go.
Yep, free of charge, no additional cost, so a real Christmas present.
Indeed. Now, so just we look at Data Manager, you and the journey from AirTrack to Atlassian. Can you fill us in a bit about that? You know, we spoke about your previous role, and then all of a sudden.
Yeah, so it was interesting. So when I was in the consulting business and we realized that we were really onto something, we spun it out as a separate company and really we were like, oh, we're really addressing a need that resonates with a lot of customers, whether they be small or very, very large. And we wanted to see what the opportunity was there. And we got a lot of uptake very, very quickly from highly regulated environments that need to report to regulatory bodies to say, we are compliant, we are complete, current, and correct, we are adhering to these security controls, and even using it to report all the way up at board level. We were mentioned on a Gartner report for CASM, so Cyber Asset Attack Surface Management, and that led to a lot of interest from a lot of different industries as well. So it was interesting because we were actually talking about what do we do as the next stage of AirTrack, and whether that be to go for investment, whether we just invested more heavily ourselves to get more people on board. And then Atlassian came knocking. So completely out of the blue, wasn't a conversation that we'd had previously, but I've got to say the M&A team from Atlassian were exceptional. We worked with them very, very closely over a period of a few months, and yeah, we managed to get it done. But the biggest change for me, Jeff, since joining Atlassian is taking off some of the hats that I was wearing as a founder, and you will know this more than anything, right? So I was legal.
It sounds free.
Yeah, it has its challenges as well, but I was legal, I was HR, I was product development, I was sales, I was all of those things. And now within Atlassian, I'm a product manager within JSM Assets, so specifically looking after assets. And that's been a really interesting journey for me, both personally and professionally. So looking at learning a new craft and getting deeper in that craft. And honestly, getting the opportunity to work with some incredible team members. So the people that Atlassian have on board are incredibly smart, really just want to get stuff done and put really good products into the hands of customers. So learning about prioritization, trade-offs, all of those things are significant to the product craft has been great. And the team that I've inherited over at Atlassian are just sensational. So really enjoying that piece of it.
Oh, that's, yeah. It must be interesting. So I was listening to, there's a podcast, Lenny's podcast. And I don't know if you've heard of that before, but it's all about product management and different ones. And one of the so the product manager for Jira Product Discovery, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, French guy. Anyway, he said it was great. He had his team away from Sydney, so they were away from corporate, so they were able to rapidly work, and they didn't have the oversight of all of Atlassian and so they had a bit of freeing, so they could really innovate quickly. But I guess that's one of the things you've got now, a big machine behind you and really pushing you, wanting to reach and get this to go to a massive customer base. So that must be very interesting.
It's super exciting, right? So if I look at as soon as I walked in the door with my background in IT asset management and config management, walking in the door and seeing what assets was and how incredibly flexible it is for one piece, So it's a double-edged sword, but it's incredibly flexible, can address a lot of use cases. And then I started looking at the rest of the solutions in the Atlassian portfolio and thought, oh my God, like the potential for this thing is massive, not just in terms of how we get this into customers' hands, but what value it can bring to them. So features like Smart Link List View for assets that was released back in April of this year. So allowing users that are non-JSM users to embed assets data on Confluence pages. Now, for me, I was just like, that's amazing. If I was in banking, financial insurances, and I needed to provide reports to APRA on a particular asset lifecycle and class, I could embed that in Confluence, have my plan there, and automate the checks and balances around that. So I'm looking at the next iteration of assets from a where else could assets be, not just around data manager, but assets more generally.
And I think that's the thing, right? Your new role is previously, was let's get quality about this, get the right data in, get that golden record. But now it's, okay, you've got that there, but how can that be, the assets be used and the information be reused, and sure, automations and all that. Now, just on that, Daniello has asked a question around assets and about can assets be used as code. So from a point of view of, I guess, saying, hey, this is the schema that we've got in the lower environment. Now we want to take it up to a higher one. So actually, now I haven't actually looked at the APIs in regards to how what's available at the moment. Not sure if you're across that sort of thing, Mike, at the moment.
Neither have I. So Danilo, I'll go away and look at that. But one of the things, and I mentioned before, the incredible flexibility of assets. So you can bring in your data in any shape with whichever attributes you want. And that's fantastic. So you can meet a lot of different use cases, but it's also a double-edged sword. So if you think about the need for some element of structure when you're approaching certain use cases, what you need to have in there is a structured schema and structured immutable attributes, so you can extend that. So this is part of our strategy, providing out-of-the-box schemas that tie to particular use cases with immutable attributes that can be extended. And then what we can do as Atlassian, and partners can do this as well, and the customers can do it themselves, is leverage other elements of the platform. So be that automation, reporting, because we understand the shape of that data. Though that's not to say we're taking away the flexibility to go and build your own schemas and structure the data whichever way you want. We'll absolutely continue to do that because of the value that brings to lots of different industries and lots of different use cases. But ultimately, what I'm trying to do in my role is understand all of the different jigsaw pieces and see how that can fit together to tell a unified Atlassian story, utilizing assets as the backbone.
I think that's one of the things that the Atlassian product suite, while it was originally started out for Jira and Confluence, and we've got developers using it, I love the business cases or the use cases there which aren't for the developers, so on the business side, because putting these tools out there for helping all teams collaborate and plan and track their work. Any team has a requirement that comes in, it's got to be taken. Quite often they're using a shared mailbox. Jira Service Management's great for that. Jira for planning and tracking your work, linking those up to goals, which have been released, which used to be part of Atlas. So then you can link it all up. But when I think about the non-IT cases for assets, such as franchises, so let's even change it from that. Emergency services. You get an ambulance. Ambulance is an asset. Ambulance has maintenance records, all that sort of stuff. But inside there's medical equipment. All that sort of stuff has maintenance requirements, gets used, as problems get raised against them. Yeah. All that sort of stuff needs to be worked at. So I really love those sorts of cases. Yeah. And linking those through. And one of the things that we've found, Mike, is assets isn't not only great for assets, for those hard ones, but also for configuration.
Yep.
So one of the things that we've, my team's certainly done is take some data coming out of Snowflake or some other tool, which hopefully we can use Data Manager in the future for, to be able to then create some sort of hierarchy to then use as configuration for other things. Yep. So it's just so flexible. Now we've got.
So just quickly on that, Jeff. So I'm just seeing one of the things that's giving me massive amounts of joy is talking to customers and partners about those use cases. So coming from, I didn't know anything about IT when I first moved over here when I was 22 years old, and that's the experience that I've got. moving into Atlassian and understanding all of the different use cases that people have around a traditional CMDB, but used to power other areas of the business. So whether that be facilities, HR, finance, kind of like legal, all of those different elements is just incredible. And we're seeing people using assets in weird and wacky ways where we can start to really lean into that and provide this connected schema, connected schemas that help you power workflow and not duplicate data. So even in those other areas of a business, whether it's facilities, as an example, you may have 3 different systems that contain the same information about locations, desks, your outsourced contractor who look after your facilities items. That's where data manager can come in again and say, we want to get clean, current, and correct data into JSM assets so we can power our workflows, but we know where the problems exist so we can remediate back at the source.
I want to just a couple of questions raised. We had Brian was more of a comment there about business assets and leveraging it for Jira. Brian's been in the Atlassian ecosystem well over a decade, 2008, I think he started. So he had lots of experience there in using it for not only IT teams. So Rua was asking there about the assets, like how many assets can we store in one site? And thanks, Tom. And I didn't have, it's funny enough, this has come up a couple of times. Total number of schemas, like.
Well, I do want to touch on that.
Massive.
Yeah. My role is all of assets, right? So one of the big things that we're investing in this year is scale and performance around assets. So looking at making sure that we've got up to 10x improvement in terms of the volume of assets that you can store, improving the speed at which you can bring that data in, improving the time to value in terms of data structure and leveraging other elements. So we're making massive investments in this because we understand how important it is to our customers and to their workflow. We want to make sure that we can remove as much pain from that experience so that you can do better work.
Yeah, I've got to admit some of the larger ones where implementations we've done has been on-prem, and you and I know that chat about some of those earlier, more secure environments with lots of, and then the security of assets and the different objects, and then anyway, it's quite complex. Things that can take place. Now, Alex has asked there about, and this is a follow-up, so I don't know if you can see the chat there, Mike, but it might be worthwhile having a quick read. Yep. This is around the static or fixed schemas, or does Data Manager going to put a limitation on that, or how would that work with the greater flexibility we've got at the moment? Yeah,
so the out-of-the-box schemas will be targeted in the start on particular use cases that customers can choose to adopt, or they can choose their own adventure, for want of a better way of putting it. We will absolutely still allow for that extensibility, but it's more saying that if we provide that common schema structure that allow you to store things in a logical way, like more of a common service-defined model for this, then we can actually help you power more in the workflow. But absolutely want you to be able to extend it and to create your own, not just use the things that we provide out of the box.
Great. Manish, yes, you can. This is being recorded. We'll share that. It'll probably come out in a week's time. Be shared on the LinkedIn. Also, we'll do an email out when the video comes in, just with a link for it. So if anyone's got any questions, feel free to put it in there. And just as we said, let Andrews hit enter. How does AirTrack impact a high-level strategy to maintain data integrity asset recertification process? What automations, integrations do we have out of the box with AirTrack integration?
So which one would you like me to address first, Jeff?
Let's go for the first one. How does that AirTrack impact the high-level strategy to maintain data integrity and asset recertification process?
Yeah, so like with Data Manager, it is about validating the existence of objects across multiple sources and saying that these things are worthy of being promoted to the CMDB or whether they need to be remediated. I might actually jump in a little bit, Jeff, and actually show some screens around Data Manager so people can get a real view for this. But the intent is that it's not just the reports in JSM. You can build your own reports in Data Manager that show the ongoing coverage and quality around your objects in your environment, whether they be IT, HR, legal, finance, whatever, so that you've got an ongoing record of the state of these assets from a coverage and quality perspective, and you have processes in place to remediate. So some of the automations that will come down the track later on is obviously leveraging JSM automation to say, I want to create a ticket based on this, and I want to do it every X period. Or if it breaches X percent of devices not covered by antivirus, as an example. The next iteration of that will be, can I use orchestration to invoke third-party tools to remediate the problem at the source, and only if that fails to then escalate to a carbon opportunities that presents for our customers. It means that I can look at my lifecycle processes and see if things are adhering. So if things are retired in the CMDB but still active across multiple sources, I have a problem in governance of my CMDB. So how can I look to improve my processes so that this problem doesn't occur again? So it's not just a one-off activity. It is about that continual verification and making sure that these items are reconciled, the processes are running properly, and that your environment is as secure as it can be.
Yeah, it's also fixing up the data at the source, etc. Sounds good. So automations or integrations. So there's a number that you're going to launch with. Can you give a bit of a flavour of what those ones will be?
Yeah, so we're going through retesting of all of the adapters that we brought across from AirTrack into Data Manager. But what I might do quickly, if I can share my screen, I'll have to open system settings. Just give me a minute, Jeff, and I'll see if I can do that.
Oh, this is going to be a restart, I reckon.
Don't do that to me. Let's see how we go here. The technology lets us down again. Oh, no, it's asking me to restart. So we might not be able to share it on this one. So I'm sorry about that. But ultimately, what we've got is a long list of adapters, traditionally more IT focused, but that's going to be extended. What we want to do is not just include the ones that are out of the box from Data Manager, but eventually look at extending that using Marketplace and other third-party solutions. So we're already working with a number of providers in the 3P space. So data that customers already have, for them to build their applications on Forge and make that available to customers so that it can integrate through Data Manager and in turn into assets. But around 30 integrations will come out of the box. And solutions like Qualys, Intune, Active Directory, so Azure AD, CMDBs, various solutions. So hopefully it will fulfill a large number of use cases for customers, but there are also ways that you can build your own. So if you've got a system that you can pull information down from, you can consume it through Data Manager. So if you have a system that has an API, you can obviously have your own API call to pull down the data, and then you can use the raw data file importer in Data Manager to bring that through, do all of your mapping, apply all of your rules, and still get that same result in an automated fashion.
So hopefully that answers your question, Andrew. Brian's got a comment there, question. And you and I have touched on this before, Mike, around the concept of an assets model marketplace where suppliers, vendors can bring their own bespoke asset schema for particular industry problems. I don't know if that's anything that you've thought about before.
So it's not something that we've explored just yet, as we talked about previously, Jeff, because obviously that's your IP. It's how it's licensed, how people, stop people from copying it is another thing. So it's more about how do we want to promote that in marketplace? How do we want to make sure that the customers get the value and see that these are options available? But I absolutely agree that it could be useful, especially for the use cases that we don't want to address. And even the ones that we do address, if there are benefits to improving that, we'd want that engagement as well with our partners and with our customers to improve them. But I agree that there could be an opportunity where you've got those models available in marketplace. So schema structures are just created, and then you can integrate the data from Data Manager to populate those schemas.
Brendan's got a question there regarding existing customers. Are there any licensing differences, such as limits at certain scale, functionality, etc.? And I guess so. I think Brendan, we spoke about this before, that it's not available on the free plan, not available on standard, is available on premium and on the enterprise plan. But is there any difference between the premium and the enterprise?
No feature differentiation between premium and enterprise.
Okay. And is there any about scale? Is there number of throughput or anything of that nature that people need to be thinking about from the number of assets coming through Data Manager?
We're obviously working through the obviously moving from what was prior to acquisition. We did a lot of deployments on premises, similar to DC, so you could improve your scale through providing more power to the server. When we're looking at a multi-tenanted SaaS solution, we need to understand those scale and performance metrics. We do have some data on that. I can't share that today, but obviously we're looking to make sure that this is in line with assets. So you won't have a degraded service by nature of adopting Data Manager. But remember that they are performing two very distinct and different tasks right now. One is about reconciliation of multiple data sources and multiple attributes to be able to create that golden record. And then it's just about surfacing into assets. So when we start to think about those two different processes, there will obviously be differences in the speed and performance. And obviously, assets has its limitations today. And we're seeing that even with what we're doing in Data Manager, the processing speed there is quicker, but we do have other challenges that we need to address, and that's what we're working through right now.
Sure. So just on, Brendan's just had a couple of other questions. So it was like one, bang, bang, bang. Is there the ability to customize the platform? So I'm thinking about the on-prem part, the solution that's on-prem. It's grabbing the data, it's structured inside there. From a point of view, and there'll be some cleansing, etc., that goes on inside that. What sort of manipulation options are there, like from a manipulating of that data?
Yeah, so there's actually a couple of stages to this, right? So the first piece is that we grab the raw data from the source with no manipulation at all. And we want raw data, no filters, because we want to apply the filters later. So there's a couple of different steps in the process. Grab the raw data, and there's the transformation jobs. So if you need to provide any additional to remove this string or do this, you can do those kind of functions within the transformation. This is all controlled within the UI. You don't have to do this piece on premises. The on-premises or the local infrastructure is there just to execute and schedule the jobs. That's all it does. If you start to look into the other rules around mapping, you can map attributes from one source to a common attribute. So you can say that machine name in Jamf is the same as computer name in Intune is the same as name in Active Directory. So you can normalize all of those things. And a lot of those mappings come out of the box too. So you can add custom attributes. You can map to a common attribute. That flexibility is there. And then the final stage is around what cleansing rules do you put on it. So each of the teams that own a data source will have a different view on what they want to be shown as total, unique, and active. So in one source, it might be, I don't want to see it in my data source if it's not logged on in the last 90 days and it's in this particular domain and it's this. You can customize those rules, and there's lots of them out of the box. But ultimately, even if I've got a machine that's disabled in Intune, as an example, from an inventory and discovery perspective, so I filtered that out from Intune, but it's still active in lots of other sources, I will still show that this record exists in Intune, but it's been discarded due to an incorrect status, but it's active in all of these other ones. That means I've got a problem with my Intune agent reporting on that box. So I can still pick those problems up. I'm not removing them. And the important piece is that we want to provide transparency throughout the entire process. So what raw data did we get? What cleansing rules were applied? And what is the final result? So the end result is that you never have any arguments with teams about the quality of the data. You never have somebody say, that's not in our data source, because we can go all the way back. So we very, very rarely have any issues. And if we do, we can point them back to the raw data.
So I'll just jump to Paul and I'll go back to Brendan. So Paul's asked about, what about data center? It's not available, Paul, for data center. This is a cloud-only offering for premium and enterprise.
That's great.
And just from a timeline perspective, it's Q4, so October through to December.
That's correct.
Yep. Okay, so back to Brendan. He said, what type of support will be included? So I'm assuming there's going to be the standard articles that are available, plus also the ability to raise requests through the help,
Yep.
through Atlassian help. Yep.
Exactly the same. And obviously there's then, if any further advice is required, there's advisory services, or there are partners out there that can help. So we're working actively with partners to make sure that they're across the solution, some of the elements that they need to be considerate of. So I'd encourage you to reach out to partners and advisory services if you need additional help. But as I mentioned earlier, we're trying to make this as streamlined as possible so that it's going to be more self-service. But you still have those avenues available to you, as Jeff mentioned. So articles in community and on WAC, so Atlassian.com, and then the ability to raise support tickets if required.
Yep. So Ru's keen to understand about the current limitation of 1 million asset records and the ability to actually go more than that. And thanks, Chrissy's pointed out a roadmap for supporting 3 million objects.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Will there be? So Christopher wants to know: will there also be a new asset discovery tool? So it's pretty much that's a discovery has been mostly on data center versions of AWS, etc. Are there? So I'm actually not familiar with discovery tools being in the cloud.
So asset discovery is an agent that's provided, and it's more for getting started. So it's not doing the complex engagement that customers require of inventory and discovery tools. So if you need something to get started, assets discovery as an agent is still there. But what we're wanting to do is to meet the market where they are with their data sources. So I don't want you to deploy yet another tool in your environment. I want to help you make the most out of what you've already got in your environment and help you identify where you've got gaps, where can other solutions help you fill that. So if I've got a deep security use case, I wouldn't recommend going to asset discovery. I wouldn't recommend that. I'd recommend looking at other solutions that give you the depth of data that you need to perform that workflow. And inevitably, it's probably something that your company's already looking at to help them to be able to report on security and compliance. And the same thing as it comes to inventory and discovery. What are your requirements? What relationship level do you need? And there are tools out in the market, but if you already have some solutions with Data Manager, you can aggregate that data to get a more detailed view.
So I'm going to keep moving on because they're firing through, and as I was quickly searching for
a good thing. Yep.
Yeah, it's great and engagement from the team. So Andrew's asking around integration or reporting with Atlassian Analytics. Mm-hmm. So available on the enterprise. I'm assuming we're talking about reporting of assets through analytics rather than actually the data manager, because you're after the golden record. I'm just not, to be frank, I'm not across that. Yeah.
Well, I can talk to that a little bit, right? Yeah. So one of the other areas that I've been looking at from in product and analytics reporting is making sure that we can give the right data in the right solution. So expect us to be looking at in product reporting around assets and improving that in the next financial year. And obviously we want to make that data available in Atlassian Analytics so that you can slice and dice the data whichever way you want and append other information from across your organization. So whether that's other 1P solutions from Atlassian, whether that is your external data that you want to bring into Atlassian Analytics to give you that comprehensive view. So assets data will be available within Atlassian Analytics as well.
Great. So there was a question there around integration with tools like Vanta. So Vanta help with your compliance with ISO 27001 and more. Anyway, so I don't think you'd have a specific one there, but Vanta does have an API.
Yep.
So leveraging that, I've just pasted the API in there for the chat. Something that my team's pretty keen on. We're doing a bit of work with Vanta at the moment.
Yep. So ISO standards are very close to my heart. So coming from an IT asset management background, ISO 19770 is the ITAM standard. And recently, so I think it was about 18 months ago, ISO 27001 actually now references the 19770 standard to make sure that it says that if you want to manage your estate, you need to make sure that you've got a complete and total inventory. So it relates back to the IT asset management standard. So these are use cases that we're looking at across not just 27001, but NIST 2 frameworks and other areas. So think about this with Data Manager, not just about assets and CMDB, but how can we help you optimize your environment to help you meet your regulatory or compliance obligations, and whether that links into a GRC solution, whether a GRC solution is built on JSM by partners or whoever, and start to look at these are the controls that we need to have in place. What is the process and which data sources are we using to adhere to those controls? That's something that's definitely got me interested.
So I'm just laughing at one of the other questions because I think we're just going to have a field day with it. Will it be connected to pull data from AWS? So there's an adapter for AWS.
So there's not one in the immediate launch, but it will be a fast follow after launch. Okay. So the focus for the team has been taking what was already existing within AirTrack and now Data Manager and taking that to market. And then as fast follows, we will be looking at AWS. But as I mentioned before, it's not just limited to what we give as an out-of-the-box integration. If you can pull the data from your source, we know that we can process that data through lots of different options. So there are options around that, and more than happy to have a separate conversation around that to give people more information.
Okay, so Axie, currently we're using ServiceNow for Service Desk and CMDB functionality. Are there any benefits to using Atlassian's wonderful Assets Data Manager? And so, so any benefits between Assets versus ServiceNow? Now, AirTrack did integrate with ServiceNow, right?
We did, yeah. So we previously, a large number of our customers also had the competitor that we're talking about. I'm going to be very careful mentioning names, but we were basically pulling information from that CMDB and other tools across an environment to validate the coverage and quality in the CMDB. So it's not necessarily to say that you have to rip and replace everything. There could be a coexist model as well, where you can check data quality, coverage, and help customers in lots of different ways. But obviously, if you want me to say, should I go JSM Assets versus a competitor? Of course, I'm going to say go JSM.
Very hard one. I was going to say what we are seeing just from an implementation point of view is ServiceNow might be there, or it could be a competitor. Mm-hmm. And it's well established. It's been there for quite a while, etc. It's got a while to run. Implementing Jira Service Management to help with other teams, get started with assets, etc. Leverage. We've had quite a few different use cases where we've had teams reach out to us and say, it's going to take 2 years mm-hmm. before the ServiceNow implementation team can get to us. Can you help us? And we've had them up and running very quickly with the Jira Service Management solution. So it's I'm not going to have a go about ServiceNow. One of my mates runs a ServiceNow partner business, and they do a great job. But I would
say that for customers, there is opportunity, obviously, to use Data Manager alongside a competitive CMDB in a coexist kind of fashion. But mm-hmm. when you're looking to, if you do look to move from a competitive solution to JSM, you've already got the pipeline to migrate data. So if you're using a competitive solution as a data source, you can make sure that you're, only bringing in complete, current, and correct data into JSM Assets and foregoing all of that garbage that you were seeing before. So there's lots of benefit, and obviously we'll have more information available on that.
Yeah. So, Michael, what kind of options will be available to pull out of Data Manager manual? So pull data out of Data Manager manual, APIs, etc. So now, well, when you go to launch or future.
Yep. So with Go Live, there will be options to extract data from all of the different reports that Data Manager provides, so you can download copies of those reports. But obviously, looking at what we have available within the Atlassian ecosystem, we want to provide automation, we want to provide APIs so that you can call these things and bring data down. And there's an extensive, I'm sure you can imagine, there's an extensive roadmap from where we were as a 12-person company to where we could be with 15,000 strong Atlassians behind us, right? So I'm super excited for what this means for my baby personally, to see where we can take this in the market, what we can do that just blows everybody's mind. So absolutely plans to expose APIs and to allow people to bring down the data in many different fashions.
So Andrew's asking about the UI and how human friendly the UI will be. for users, data stewards, etc., around updating manual data sets for asset recertification and integration with Jira workflows.
Yep.
They're currently using, or Interest Firm's currently using Jira workflows for humans to update asset data.
Okay, interesting. So there's obviously a couple of elements to this. So from a data manager perspective, what we're doing is consuming data from data sources. So we're not manually editing assets in data manager. We're not doing that. But obviously that takes part of the process because you're doing that reconciliation. You're nominating which attribute from which source takes priority, which helps to make sure that you've got more curated and quality data in assets to begin with. The second side of that is how do we allow users that are non-JSM admins, as an example, to update their assets and certify that they're in the right location, with the right user, etc. Obviously, JSM provides mechanisms to do that, whether it be through tickets or through forms or whichever. But there's definitely lots of exploration happening about how do we make this more available to a broader set of users so that they can have input. But obviously for data stewards, you don't want everybody having access to update every record. It can create a bit of a mess. But again, that's where data manager's got you back, because it will be validating the accuracy and responses that are provided.
Yeah, it's kind of in the cleansing of the data, if you like, first off, and feeding back to the feeding systems, or such that data is incorrect or whatever. But then once it's actually inside assets, making sure that's right.
Yeah, Andrew, I'd be more than interested in having another chat about your experience there and how you're doing things. So feel free to reach out. But with the other side of that is, again, we are making sure that these things are clean, current, and correct. We're making sure that you are cleansing that data up front. The other piece that I've not really touched on yet is the normalization capability. So we obviously do some element of normalization for things like operating system to get down to a more human-friendly and readable format for an operating system. So raw operating system value to an OS version up to a platform. So that's an element of normalization. But you can do the same thing with Data Manager for any attribute. So if you've got locations that say QT Sydney versus 363 Sydney versus this, that, and the other, they all equate to Sydney. You can build those libraries so that you can normalize your data so that it makes it more accessible and easy to interpret. So I'm really looking forward to you guys getting your hands on this and playing around, because I think you're going to see a lot of benefits.
I think there's going to be some really interesting use cases coming out. The smarts, AI, etc., for potential issues, etc., is that more going to be when it's in? Yeah, where any thoughts on that? I mean, Atlassian's huge into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's obviously conversations happening around AI for assets, for data manager, for all of the things. And what our roadmap looks like is extensive. So we're looking at how we apply all of the innovation that Atlassian brings to the core platform into assets, into data manager, because these things are one. So data manager is a feature of assets. So we shouldn't really be thinking about them as two separate solutions. It's a feature within assets. But AI and automation are front of mind because we want to make sure that we are reducing the workload on the people, putting it into the hands of the system so that we can, to use an Atlassian term, unleash the potential of every team. Do you like that?
Yeah. I love that. I won't ask you to reel off the values just yet, and got to be careful of the language of some of them.
Exactly.
Look, Clayton's asked a question. It was a direct message to me, so others won't see it. He's not working with assets before, but listening to this, he's interested to understand: can you maintain assets, etc.? So maintain assets at the moment live in. Let's put this as cloud, and assets is available in premium and enterprise on Jira Service Management Cloud. You can maintain assets, etc., but it would require you to move away from other applications. So you don't have to. So what I think, Clayton, what this is, assets. So we've got two things. We've got assets, which is part of Jira Service Management. We've now got this tool, previously called AirTrack, being replatformed, being industrialized over on the Atlassian cloud Atlassian systems, to be able to integrate and get the golden data. Is that how you'd say it? The golden record over into assets, and whether that's however many they might be. So you can still integrate with other systems. So it's going to come out of the box with, I think you said about 30 mic adapters, and also you can use APIs to connect up to other systems. So connect API to another system, grab the data, and then import that data over into Data Manager that then goes into assets. So you don't have to get away from other tools. And in fact, as Mike was sort of saying, if there's a configuration management database that you might want to bring your data across from there, that might be something that you might want to do. So Data Manager is going to be available, generally available. Is that GA, or is it still?
The open beta is going to be the first iteration in Q4, and then we'll be moving to GA as soon as we possibly can.
Open beta, before Christmas, so sometime between October and 24th of December. So that's going to be available then. Of course, Assets is available right now. You can integrate and deploy things to Assets at this moment in time. There's APIs, etc., available, so you can still do that. This is not going to remove that. This is a new capability. So I'm just making sure I'm covering Clayton's question. That's right. So the verified assets and getting that master record. Now, there's been a couple more questions come through. One of them was, can we hold a session where Mike demos the product?
We can.
So
we can. I'm so sorry, team, that I didn't have this set up beforehand, but we will. I'm more than happy to. Jeff, obviously, you're the one that controls the session. More than happy to run another session where we walk through Data Manager, have it be as interactive as we want it to be as well, to let people ask questions. We can drive around and do that. We are going to be putting up some recordings on Loom as well, so that people can see the solution. There are videos in the community for Data Manager as well, and if there's anybody that's interested, we can make sure that people get added to the community to see those videos and to see some of the training material.
Yeah, great. So we might we'll touch base, Mike, and schedule something, whether that's when it gets a bit closer, maybe in a month's time or whatever. Yeah. So okay, well, we hold a similar session in the US working hours. What we're going to do is make this available online through the Australian New Zealand community YouTube channel. We'll push that on LinkedIn. So just so people are aware, so while we're so I'm from the Canberra Atlassian community, a leader in that, but we work collaboratively with Brisbane, Sydney, Sunshine Coast. See you there, Carolyn, and Mark and various others, and Wellington, to make it available so we can help share the load. So some communities overseas have also joined us, and that's great. But they'll be available on YouTube, and I'm sure Mike will be available for other chapters in other time zones. We'll get quite a few probably questions and sessions to be asked to be part of. Okay, so Danilo has been asking about training and availability. Now, I know there's training that's available currently for partners, which is just a bit of a taster to get ready for this. But Mike, just generally from a launch in the university, any idea on training that might be available on there?
I know that we, as you mentioned, we've put together the partner training. I'll have to touch base with the team and see about the end user customer training, Jeff. It's something that's just not top of mind at the moment. Sure. But yeah, Danilo, we've spent a lot of time going through documentation, updating documentation, putting together Loom videos to help people in training and accessibility. So it's something that I'll take on notice, and I'll come back and provide an answer async. That's
great. Now it's 5:27. We've still got 50 people. There was a peak of 59. So that's very much of a topic people are interested in. So Mike, thanks very much for joining us today, sharing your journey. Really, it's good to see you again. But yeah, let's join up again in about a month's time, etc. If people want to contact you, Mike, from a point of view, there was a couple of like Andrew and a couple of other people had some interesting sort of use cases. Want to delve? What's the best way to sort of reach out to you?
Well, I would happily give out my email address. I'm not. What we might do, Jeff, is to give this out after the session as well, given we're being on it all over the place. But we'll make sure there's a proper channel for people to contact, to ask questions, to engage with the team. So as a product leader, we want to hear from the community. We want to hear from the customers and partners and really engage with you, because we can't do things in like an isolation chamber. We don't have all of the best ideas. We want to lean on the community and our partners to make sure that we provide a good experience and a great product that you can be proud of using.
Now, Carolyn wants to thank you, Mike. Oh, I see later on she said thanks, Jeff, as well. Nice. So thanks all for tapping in. This will be on LinkedIn, we'll join up again for another session in a month or 6 weeks. Mikey, you got your travel. Enjoy.
I do. Thank you so much, team. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all, and looking forward to working with you in the future.
Great.
See you, folks.
Cool.
Bye.